Well, it might well be the middle of winter here in New Zealand, but cricket is firmly in the headlines and the forefront of our minds, despite the small numbers on the temperature gauge. A captivating Ashes series filled with drama stokes the fire late at night. Meanwhile, the ICC Men's 50-over World Cup draw has just been released and features some blockbuster games, including a 2019 final rematch between us and England, of course, to launch the tournament. Qualifying stage for this tournament has produced some spectacular moments and performances, but it's also continued to raise concern over the state of West Indies cricket, which may well reflect a deeper issue for the sports landscape. T20 franchises are becoming all-consuming. The future calendar has never been as confusing or as busy, and who holds the cards moving forward is a question worth getting to the bottom of. Well, Greg Barclay is a long-serving administrator when it comes to cricket in New Zealand and abroad, but most importantly, he sits now as the chairman of the ICC, a very prestigious and important role, which he has held now for a number of years. And he's managed to find a little bit of busy time in his schedule to have a chat to us. Greg, good morning to you, and thanks so much for your time.
Oh, that's a pleasure, Ian. Always good to chat with you, as you know. And yeah, I was quite intrigued to hear me called referred to as a long-standing administrator. I didn't sort of think that I was aging at all, but clearly I am.
Clearly you are. You've been around a long, long time and important periods of time as well. Hey, Greg, just on that, the role of the ICC chairman, how much time does it take you away from New Zealand?
Well, this year, I guess that there's a bit of COVID catch-up, trying to fit a bit of stuff in, which I've been doing over the last 12 to 18 months. But a reasonable period of time. I mean, I've probably been away from New Zealand in blocks this year already 8 weeks. And obviously I'm away tonight to the back end of this qualifying tournament in Zimbabwe, then ICC meetings in Durban in the days following, and we lead through to the end of the year with the World Cup in India. So, it might be sort of 14, 15 weeks by the end of the year that I've been out of the country. So it's a lengthy period of time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would imagine too that the fact that you're at home means it's still a lot of work in terms of communications and emails, etc. Like that. I mean, almost a daily thing.
Yes, yep. The one saving grace around that is, given time zones and whatnot, I can put most of the ICC work into early morning slots, so 6 to 9 or whatever. If I'm doing UK or South Africa, those parts of the world, and if I'm doing Asia and the Middle East, I can do evenings. So it does free up a working day in most senses, but it does obviously make for a long day. So yes, there are periods where I'm spending hours on it. Absolutely.
Greg, one of the roles I would imagine which is centre to what you're doing and what the ICC are doing is the future of cricket around the world and the guaranteed nature of it as such. And one of the question marks has been of late around about the future of the 5-day game of Test cricket. And people are saying, look, only the strong will survive. It's going to be a very small group of countries that particularly will be playing in it now. Is that something that's on the agenda constantly for you?
Yes, it is. It's sort of front of mind all of the time, really trying to make the calendar work. And I mean, first and foremost, we're fortunate. We've got these 3 forms of the game, and they all seem to captivate audiences when they're sitting in their right slots and have the right context applied to them. One of them certainly helps fund a large part of the game, but of course, at the other end of the spectrum, the Test game is the part that gives us our history and our legacy and almost our point of difference. But because of the traditional nature of that, it's a form of the game that's played by men predominantly. I fully accept that there have been women playing Test cricket for a long period of time, but it is predominantly played by men and a limited number of countries. And given the nature of the calendar and what you alluded to in your introduction, it is going to be very difficult to continue to play Test cricket in the way that we've experienced it in the decades leading up to now. So, something needs to give somewhere, and you couple that with the fact that Test cricket is expensive. So if you're if you're not one of the larger, better resource countries, then you are going to struggle to play Test cricket. That's a fact. Now, there are some things that we can do to address that. Obviously, ICC coming to the party, looking to support it in various ways. But that will only go so far. If you don't have domestic competitions and you're not resourcing up the longer form of the game, then it's very difficult to suddenly produce a top team that can walk in to play a Test match. And if you want to see a great example of that, just look at the struggles that Ireland have. They've been a full member for 6 years or something now. They've tried to battle their way through Test cricket with no genuine base to the red ball or long form of the game. And it shows they're struggling.
It's an interesting question, and the timing of the question is I guess, a little bit interesting as well, because right now we're in the middle of a very hotly contested and talked about Ashes series. We've just seen a World Test Championship final, and for people looking in on Test cricket, they say, "Man, this game must be in great shape. Look at the numbers."
Yeah, well. Probably early days in some respects, in that the World Test Championship, I think, has given the long form of the game a shot in the arm. So we do have relevance and context, and we do have scheduling and resourcing to help with that. So I think that's certainly helped to drive some interest. And of course, in your traditional forms of the game, the Ashes being the ultimate example, you will always generate interest in it. It's just so inherently ingrained in the cricket psyche of the countries that are playing it that it's hard to imagine there will ever be anything less. Although I think it's gone to another level now with a lot of the factors at play. But again, if you look at the opposite end of the spectrum, so go to those maybe 6 or 8 countries outside of that 4 to 6, and they're struggling with long form. Zimbabwe, Ireland, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka. Test cricket is a battle for them. As much as it would be fantastic to see them there and see them playing a lot more cricket. And I guess that you get to a point where you just have to work out, well, what is the most optimum structure you can put in place. And I think if you look at New Zealand as a good example, circa 4 tests at home, 4 tests away. You might have one more, one less, whatever it looks like. But that seems to work, and maybe that's the model that a lot of countries should be pushing for, to see if they can't get something that sort of works in that sort of sense.
Greg, there was a time not that long ago where people were saying, "Gosh, so we can't sustain 3 forms of the game." You mentioned before that they each have their own level of interest, which is very encouraging. And here we are in a World Cup year of the 50 over variety, and we all remember what happened in 2019. That form of the game was on a bit of a high. Do you see that with a World Cup in India, of all places, as a time to really recash in on 50 over cricket?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, that, and it's something that I think we're all aware of as stakeholders in the game, but certainly at ICC level, it's almost become the one form of the game that's lost its way a little bit. T20's doing what it's doing, and I'm sure we'll have a conversation about that. But let's assume with some of the issues that it brings that it's thriving. Test cricket, I think, is coming back, but we do have challenges, as I've already said. The bit that maybe is not fitting as well as it should at the moment is the 50 over game, and yet it is still the most followed and the most lucrative form of the game when we put it into the context of a World Cup at ICC level. So it becomes massive in every 4th year that we're playing the game. But something needs to change. I think with what we've done with T20 and the maybe some of the relevance that's brought to bear, the fact that we've got 20 teams playing in a men's World Cup, 12 across the women's game, that we're giving better opportunity and more access to those world events. Whereas the one day it's different. So it is. And it's going to take some work if we're going to maintain it in terms of its current sort of primacy as part of the world program. The context or the lack of context, the lack of following and relevance across most of the one days that are played right through that 4-year cycle is something that badly needs to be addressed.
Greg, you mentioned before you're on the way very shortly to head to the closing stages of the ICC qualifying tournament for the upcoming World Cup, and then you've got meetings as such. One of the, I suppose, concerning things to come out of this is the demise of the West Indies, and people are now saying the game is in serious decline in that part of the world. Now, here is an international team which has contributed so much and set the standard for so long. Is that something the ICC look at and are very concerned about?
Yes, yep. The decline of the game in any region of the world is concerning, given that most of the time and most of our measures are actually on an upward projection. So, the fact that you have got a region like the Caribbean in decline, and as you say, couple that with its rich history in the game, it's hugely concerning, and unfortunately, it's in part a reflection of the way that not just cricket but probably the sporting landscape is moving. Money is really important in the professional era of sport. So I think that we can lay some of the blame at the door of professionalism and money coming into the game, which makes it very difficult for a region like the Caribbean, which consists of 16 islands, all with their own government and governance structures, without a lot in common apart from some geographical proximity. So to try and pull the game together in this current environment is really tough. So it's we're doing what we can to support the West Indies. Obviously, we can't create some sort of false construct at all. They've got to work through their issues at home to a large degree, and domestically that is really, really tough. And as I said, coupled with the fact that the players are being attracted to better remuneration elsewhere, particularly the leagues, means that it's becoming doubly hard for them. So the simple answer, Ian, is that it's hugely concerning.
The growing emergence, so I won't say emergence because it's been here for a while, but the growing stature, shall we say, of T20 cricket, and the fact you have a World Cup of T20 cricket, basically, or a World Championship every couple of years. The next one, I think, is in the United States, coupled with the West Indies, which may be a bit of an issue in itself. But T20 cricket, I mean, is it's just a giant as far as you're concerned? Is it getting to the point where it's an overwhelming giant, you feel?
Yeah, aspects of it are overwhelming, no doubt about that. I mean, it has grown so quickly as a phenomenon that I'm not sure that we've all really managed to grasp exactly in a measured way how to continue to use that to grow the game. Again, I go back to the opening comment that I made. I mean, we have to see this as an opportunity, and we're really fortunate to have, in the last 15 years or so, to have had this form of the game that's been able to do what it's done. And I think, we can't resolve from the fact that it reflects modern society. Kids playing the game, parents being involved in it, people watching it, consuming it, fans as well as players, veering in all forms of life to, almost instant gratification type mentality, that they're fitting these things in as best they can. So it does reflect, I guess, what society is doing, and maybe the ogre of the broadcaster or whatever is demanding the shorter form of the game because obviously it sells. People have time to get along for a few hours, whereas they don't for days on end. All of those factors come into play. So we've got something that sustains that, which is great. And it's been again, if we look at the decline that was happening in cricket, to be able to arrest that and turn it around, albeit with the shorter form of the game, I guess is great. We want people playing cricket no matter what form it is, as opposed to not playing cricket. And it's also been a great shot in the arm for the women's game as well. And I think we're going to see that explode over the coming years in terms of the form of the game that will underpin what the females are going to play and what they'll be attracted to. So look, it's great, but like all facets of growth, it comes with its issues. There is no doubt about that. And you can see that manifesting, not least of all, in the proliferation of domestic leagues around the world. They are creating a lot of consternation, not just amongst administrators, but numerous other people involved in the game, as that calendar just starts to become more and more congested.
It's a double-edged sort of sword you've got there too, because on one hand, people are demanding it. On the other hand, players and some high-profile players are saying it's way too busy for us. It's way too congested for us. We can't fit it in physically or mentally. How do you balance that out? It must be very, very tough.
Yeah, it is. It's hugely tough. And, I think that's the bit that I'm not sure that enough attention has been given to is the welfare of the players. You can't blame a player that might be an injury away from the end of his or her career. Setting up a family and setting up for life after cricket to cash in on what the leagues are offering. They simply can't play the game every day of every month of every year. So they are going to start to prioritise what they're doing, and you can see that beginning to happen in the way that players are maybe not accepting central contracts or permanent contracts. They're trying to keep options open. They're trying to work around it. I guess the challenge for all of us is to, again, try to work out where the balance is there. How do you contract better? How do you schedule better? What do we need to do with that calendar to maybe relieve some of the pressures that we're facing? And what parts of the game maybe do we deprioritise to create some room, and as I say, to reduce or relieve some of the pressure? So they're all challenges. I mean, there are always challenges in sport, and cricket is no different. At least we're grappling with the right problems here, which is how to control more interest and more participation, and more of the sport being played, as opposed to sitting at the other end of the spectrum where we're scratching our heads wondering how to deal with a sort of empty stadium and people going off to play different sports. So again, it's a positive issue to deal with, but it is absolutely an issue that is going to take a lot of thinking through. And I know I'm talking a lot here, but I think the answer to begin with lies in the calendar. Getting better alignment across that calendar and working with the member countries that are establishing or already have these leagues to see if there isn't sort of some compromise around that, because the bit that probably poses the biggest issue of all is self-interest. It doesn't matter whether you're India, whether you're Zimbabwe, any of the associate countries. First and foremost, they're setting up leagues because they work for their own domestic concerns, they provide opportunity, and they provide money. So they're always going to vote with their wallets, as opposed to necessarily looking long-term at what's better for the game, and trying to turn maybe that mode of thinking around a little bit to realise that we're in a great position, but we don't want to break it. We've just got to modify some things here to ensure that the game stays really popular, it continues to do what it does, and ultimately is sustainable.
Greg, when it comes to the power at the table, the board, for years people have said, "Oh, there's the big three or four, England, India, Australia, followed by the next group down." Is that a thing? I mean, are there major stakeholders as opposed to smaller factions within the running of the game?
Yeah, the answer to all of that is yes. The big three, I think, is it's an easy label to apply to three countries that probably a better or have the better cricketing resources of any country in the world. But to be honest, I don't experience a big three thing at all at the ICC. I have an expectation that India, England, and Australia recognise the strength that they have in cricket, and they use that to help in a variety of ways to bring or move the game forward. I think that they have both an obligation and a responsibility to do that, whether that's playing against lesser members, whether that's turning up to all the world events, contributing, on the administrative side of the game, in a whole variety of ways. But I don't necessarily equate that with some sort of the odious kind of label that's given to the big three. What we do have undoubtedly is a really influential member in India, for all the obvious reasons, and that does take some managing. Again, fortunate to have a country that can do what India does, and that they been able to contribute what they have to the game. But clearly, when you've got, I guess, that degree of influence, it takes some management, just to make sure that everything stays in alignment. And often it's not easy. But by and large, I found them really, really good to work with. They're positive, and they do accept their responsibility, given the attributes that they bring to cricket.
Greg, just finally, we saw around 18 months ago now, a Women's World Cup in New Zealand. And I think this country in particular got to see firsthand the interest and the standard of cricket in particular, and how much excitement there is about the women's form of the game. Do you see that globally?
Yes, but not probably to the extent that we would like to or want to. You're seeing things like the Com Games, which was great. I was fortunate enough to be there, and it was a really vibrant part of the program, the cricket. So you're seeing all these opportunities starting to emerge. That there's no doubt that the ICC events are vastly improved, and the standard of cricket and the opportunity that's given to the athletes is getting better and better. So hopefully it will become self-perpetuating in terms of the opportunity and the success of the game. But clearly there are, for a whole variety of reasons, not least of all cultural and geographic and economic, there are large parts of the world, excuse me, that are way behind where England, Australia, even New Zealand are in terms of the females that are participating in the game. So you sort of look at it and go, well, there's a lot of work to be done, and there is, but it's also a great opportunity. Once we can get Asia, South Asia, Middle East, those Gulf states, parts of Africa, it is a wonderful opportunity. There is no doubt about that, and I have no doubt that it will eventuate as well. I think that the future of cricket is really, really bright.
Well, it's great to hear, Greg, and we do really appreciate your time, and we wish you safe travels across to Africa coming up very shortly, and I'll look forward to catching up with you personally, perhaps at the World Cup, October, November in India. I look forward to that, and having a chinwag. Yep.
Indeed. No, I really look forward to that. And, thanks very much for having me on. It's been great to chat.
SENZ. It's Kiwi for Sport.